Hi, and welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, we're going to take a look at the state of the Pennsylvania economy and see how the folks who care about the economy and who work in it and study it think about the future, and particularly Governor Rendell's ambitious agenda for a second term. But before that, we're going to hear from our friends from the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association with your New Year's resolutions. That is, your financial New Year's resolutions. Back in a moment.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Terry Madonna here for Pennsylvania Newsmakers. All right, here we go. Every year we do this, New Year's resolutions. Now, I know you're always making them about what you're going to eat or not eat, and losing weight. I know how we all mean that when we say we're going to lose weight. Well, we're going to talk about your financial New Year. And joining me, as often is the case, is Rick Wargo, who's the General Counsel for the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, and Kipp Stecher, who is CEO of AmeriChoice Federal Credit Union. Gentlemen, welcome.
Delighted to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. All right, look, let's get to it. You know, we all make these resolutions, right? Now, this year I didn't make any, but we're going to try to help our viewers out there, particularly with this, the budget and the finances and the borrowing and who you borrow from. We do some great stuff, you know, with you folks through the year. Great advice to our listeners. Rick, let me start with you. You guys have 5 resolutions you want to recommend that people make. Take it. Resolution number 1. What is it?
Okay, most important, getting out of the chute, develop a written monthly annual budget. There isn't any one of us who probably didn't overspend a little bit during the holiday season.
Yeah, like we didn't do that.
Hand is in the cookie jar already in 2007. But a lot of Americans, over 40%, admit that they live beyond their means. Half of us are living paycheck to paycheck, so that one calamity can really put a consumer in financial trouble. It is amazing what you spend if you just pull out a slip of paper and write down what you spend. You know, on the way to work, I bought a coffee, I bought a newspaper.
Who thinks of that? You're right. I don't ever think of that.
And if you do that and you see where the money goes, so that's why if you make that effort to budget, you know, itemize those expenses and obviously save. And Kipp, I believe you guys would help your members with budgeting, if that's right?
Yeah, we have people on staff that all you have to do is call us and come in, and we have people that will sit down and go over your finances with you and help you out.
No charge?
No charge at all.
Well, I tell you,
Credit Union way.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question. In addition, you know, it's sort of segue into the resolution number 2, which is you do need, you know, you're obviously going to you folks, you have as your second recommendation, get a relationship with a credit union or a bank because, take it from there, why?
Well, first of all, there's about roughly 10 million Americans that are unbanked. That means they don't deal in the mainstream of credit union or banks.
Are they putting the money in their mattress or something?
Well, some of them are. Some of them are dealing with the cash, check cashers,
Yep.
payday lenders, and so on and so forth. So we really think that these people need to establish a relationship with a bank or credit union, primarily a credit union.
Yeah, and okay, you got your plug in here.
Yeah, thank you.
But the other thing is, I mean, if you do that, the point is that you can get advice then about how to control your spending, about what to do with your budget. So in other words, financial institutions, as a rule, understand that and want people to do that. Is that the bottom line?
That's the bottom line.
All right, let me go. Personal debt. We all have it to some degree. How important, I mean, you're going to go into the new year with some measure of debt. What should folks be doing in regard to their debt?
Take a real critical look at that personal debt load. 66% of Americans don't pay off their credit card each month. Credit card debt continues to rise. In 1990, it was just under 3,000. Now it's nearly over 9,000 in 2005. You you make a plan to pay it down. Start with your highest rate loan, attack that thing. The value in that is if you are paying down your higher priced loans over the long term, you're going to pay less interest or smaller finance charges on that. If you have a high cost piece of debt, obviously consider refinancing. There are a lot of options out there for refinancing as well.
All right. Now, in addition to figuring out how to pay off your debts, people should begin to think of what to do on the savings side, even if it's a little bit.
Primarily, exactly right. Everybody gets paid. The first thing you should do is pay yourself. Take 10%, 2%, 5%, whatever it is, whatever you can afford. Save. That's the first payment you should make before you make your mortgage payment or anything else.
I'll tell you something fascinating. When I started teaching, we were allowed to do these equivalent of 401k, and I would put like $10 every other week from my salary. Now, as I earned more over the years, I could put more in, but you start doing that and let that just accrue for 20 or 30 years. That can be a heck of an investment over a long period of time. All right, last one, the kids. We don't do a lot of this financial education with kids. Why is that important?
The young people need to know that essentially money is a tool, and our young people, unfortunately, are somewhat ignorant of finances. Like, for example, Consumer Reports did a survey and found out that 12-year-olds did not realize that credit cards were a form of borrowing. It's really important in the formative years, teach the kids how to use money, to be responsible, so that when they hit college and they're going away for the first time and you arm them with plastic and they're away from mom and dad, they can manage it. I know Kipp Shop does a number of financial literacy programs and outreach. You might want to amplify that.
Yeah, we do. Terry, we spend a lot of money on teaching the kids about drug abuse, but we spend no money teaching them about finances.
You're right.
The kids grow up and go to college. If I got no mail in college, I got a lot of mail on charge cards.
Oh, man, do you ever.
And you jump into that.
Yep.
We at AmeriChoice have opened a branch in East Pennsboro High School in Enola, and we also opened a branch in Central Penn College.
Right.
And we spend a lot of time and effort training those kids. The kids actually run the branches, and it's worked out really well. We're trying to do our part to teach the kids.
All right, good job. Thanks for the timely update. There they are, your 5 resolutions for financial safety. Now, that's not a bad way to look at it. In the upcoming year, when we come back, we're going to take a look at the economy of Pennsylvania, Governor Rendell's agenda, in connection to that when we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education, 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania, and by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Joining me is Steve Stetler, who's the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Economy League, the Capital Region, and who also was a former member of the state legislature for many years, representing York, Pennsylvania, and some of the suburban areas around York. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, it was the city of York and Spring Garden Township and North York Borough.
Well, what happened a couple of weeks ago in the legislature? Are you upset that you weren't there? Do you miss that just a little bit, all the fun and the excitement of that?
Well, there's a phenomenal amount of excitement up there, and watching it these last couple of days, it's a lot of chaos, and I don't miss it. It's funny. Colin and I were talking last night about it, and I said, I'm very happy. I made a great decision.
Well, your wife probably had more to say about that than you did, right?
Well, she's always the one who kind of looks doesn't second guess, but she certainly does challenge me in my thinking process.
All right, Steve has been heavily involved in policy formation over the years in his days in the legislature. One of the guys who thought an awful lot about policy, also a little bit about politics, which everybody has to do. Okay, we're going into Governor Rendell's second term. Tell me what you think some of the big problems are that the state needs to look at. Reel a couple of them off and we'll chat about them.
Well, I think Governor Rendell's going to focus on a couple of huge problems. One, certainly transportation, whether it's mass transit or highway construction. Health care is another issue. I think that Local government concerns.
Modernization, you mean?
Well, and shared services, things of that nature. I think it's a looming issue. I mean, when you look at the health of local municipalities, Act 47 needs to be addressed. I mean, I think the governor's got a full
about this? I mean, one of the things we've been talking about on the program, the sale of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, is that something, or leasing it, whatever it is, do you think that's something that the legislature should seriously address?
We did a study just prior to the Governor's Commission coming out.
Is this the PA Economy League?
The Economy League did a study, and leasing the Turnpike was one part of several recommendations that study put forth. You know, the issue of regionalizing Pennsylvania in terms of looking at issues. I mean, the Southeast is a much different region than South Central, where we are. I mean, they're far more focused on the need for mass transit than we are. South Central needs mass transit.
But we have roads and bridges
that need to be addressed.
I mean, there's problems. They're just, as you're saying, just a little bit different in nature.
And so, coming up with a solution to all the problems, we can't focus just on the Turnpike. That is not a panacea. There are obvious other problems that need to be addressed holistically. Turnpike is something we think, we recommend it should be on the table for discussion, but not by itself. There are other solutions that need to be addressed. All
right, I'm chatting with Steve Stetler. We're going to take a little break. We're dealing with Governor Rendell's very, very, you would agree with this, ambitious agenda. One of the more ambitious agendas for a governor's second term, yes or no?
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to continue with this discussion after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Terry Madonna here for the program. I'm chatting with Steve Stetler, the Executive Director of the PA Economy League, the Capital Region. We're talking about Governor Rendell's ambitious agenda. Economy League, of course, is an organization that has a lot of concern, does a lot of studies about how we can implement government policy in an effective and efficient manner. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. That's a great ad. Great
sales
ad
for you guys. All right. Look, one of the things that obviously, I want to go back to the mass transit and highway situation. You were in the legislature, so you have a really good handle on this. Ultimately, the state looks like to solve the long-term problems, in addition to maybe getting economies out of the system, which maybe can be found, but it also looks like they're going to need some dedicated source of funding, and that will be controversial.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because the Constitution prohibits the use of monies raised through gas taxes to be used on anything other than the highways and the bridges. So, I mean, you have that one thing going on, and we know that there's a need. The Governor's Commission came out with a number of about $1.9 billion to deal with both the issue of mass transit and with the highways and bridges.
But you get into the T word.
Absolutely.
The tax word, and, you know, whether that's doable or not, some other. But in your judgment,
But
go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, it's a much easier sell in the central part of the state, I think, if you're dealing with highways and bridges.
And mass transit in the urban areas.
And that's why the idea of maybe regionalizing the state and allowing local regions to raise money to deal specifically with their problems might be more palatable to the legislature and to the local communities. I mean, there's been polling done. We did polling about 4 or 5 months ago, which indicated that in the regions, if money's raised there and spent on specific problems in that region, that the taxpayers are pretty amenable to that.
In other words, hey, you spent a lot of time in the legislature, and you know, there's sort of this, I'll be blunt about it, sort of anti-Philadelphia bias or prejudice which exists.
It's a great campaign.
Yeah, right. So what you're saying is that, let's say we take South Central Pennsylvania just for this discussion, and we could be talking about Western PA. You'll let the municipalities there pool their resources, decide that maybe they want to use money that they get from some dedicated source to do projects that are peculiar and needed there, as opposed to passing one piece of legislation that covers everybody. Is that your point?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. That would be part of it. But it would also, you know, the study said that maybe in the southeast, and if a region, maybe the 5-county area, will want to band together and maybe raise a tax that would deal specifically, dedicated specifically to mass transit, they would be allowed to do that.
But let me ask you this question. Bottom line here is, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most important, where would you rate this whole issue of mass transit and highway and bridge funding?
I think it's a 9 or a 10.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about the economics of Pennsylvania and how important for us to be competitive,
Yep.
if we don't have a decent highway system, if
Yep.
we don't have mass transit, we're not competitive.
Yep.
We're absolutely not competitive.
All right. Well, let's turn to another another subject here. I think that Governor Rendell, in particular, is going to focus a lot in this spring on trying to get the legislature to do something with health care. Mm-hmm. Now, you know that the business community is, beset with these $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 per person costs, cutting back health care, certainly with co-pays and deductions, and the rising costs are forcing more companies to eliminate or cut coverage. In addition to that, we got this 1.2 million Pennsylvanians without any coverage. First of all, let me ask you, how important do you think that is as a problem in the state?
Well, I mean, as a business owner,
yeah.
I can tell you health care is a huge concern. I mean, we have the rising cost of health care every year is probably the major element in terms of developing an operating budget for an organization, nonprofit, for-profit, whatever.
Sure.
So I mean, it's critical. I mean, we're only, of all the industrialized nations in the world, we're the only one that doesn't have health care universal for all its residents. Puts business at a huge disadvantage. I mean, I'm not suggesting that universal health care is the answer, but I'm just saying that dealing with the issue
well, let me
in
tell
some
you,
fashion
first
or
of all,
another.
it's popular. I've polled it, and it's popular in the state. It's popular. It's coming.
Yeah.
I think the question is, who delivers it and how do we pay for it? I think that it is. And by the way, people get health care anyway. They just go to the hospitals, and then you add burdens to the hospitals. Have to do the coverage, right?
Absolutely.
All right. When we come back, we're going to continue this discussion. My special guest today, Steve Stetler, the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Economy League out of the Capital Region. We'll return in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Builders Association, building today for a better tomorrow, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
All right, welcome back to the program with Steve Stetler from the Pennsylvania Economy League. All right, Steve, one of the things I think the PA Economy League has been known for over the years sort of is its studies of local government. You have a lot of folks who pay attention. A couple of entities and universities, for example, look and study local government, and I've often thought it was sort of one of the neglected areas. A lot of maybe you would agree or not agree with that.
Well,
as a whole?
PEL has been involved with local government.
I understand, but as a whole.
But as a whole.
Yeah.
Something that the governor's hopefully will focus on this next 4 years.
It seems to me that I want to talk about two specific areas. I know you've done a lot of research and you're very knowledgeable about this. One has to do with modernization, at least in the sense that we used to talk about consolidating, getting one municipality to join with another, get rid of some of these inefficiencies. But as you know, politically, that's not happening. But there is another way in which you can achieve some economies in government services, and that's by what I think is called functional consolidation. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, we have studied, PEL's been around for 70 years, and we have been involved with a lot of discussions on school mergers and municipal mergers, and we've just found that the politics of it at times is just almost impossible.
Yeah.
But that when you go in and do the studies, you can show to supervisors and superintendents where functions can be shared. There are, whether it's police, whether it's fire, whether it's snow emergencies.
How about health care? Something we just talked
Absolutely.
about. Why do
Pensions,
we have to have...
Pensions is another area that we need. Some of those will require state legislation to deal with, especially with pensions. But they are some excellent opportunities for local municipalities and school districts to look at shared functions, shared responsibilities that could result in substantial savings of tax dollars.
I agree. I mean, as you know, I think under Pennsylvania law, maybe it's the Constitution, I guess it is, each municipality, let's say you have two municipalities, they sit next to each other, each has to agree to a merger. And usually one will be opposed to it because it won't see any advantage in it. And that's very difficult to accomplish. But your argument is that you could take 30 or 40 municipalities, hypothetically, in a region, and they might share police, and they might, and get some economy of scale as whether get the service. I mean, you might actually be able to increase the quality of the service.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, it's interesting when you look at the way the demographics of Pennsylvania is kind of shifting, and you look at where some municipalities are not as wealthy as they were 35 years ago. Population loss, businesses leaving, go ahead. Well, but also an increased demand for services. So that, you know, in municipalities in 1970 had no paid police, had no paid fire. In 2005, 2006, you're looking at paid police, paid fire, and, you know, the cost to the taxpayer is increasing. I mean, it's a service everybody wants. But it might not be being delivered at the most economical fashion. All right, let's turn to one other topic, and that is, you know, it's almost not daily, but certainly weekly. You pick up a newspaper and you read where some municipality has some fiscal problems, where they've got debt. Maybe the debt's caused, you know, it's what we call structural debt. You know, it could be as a result, you know, they can't pay their bills because they've got too much a debt out there, services they have to provide. Sometimes it's long-term debt because of pensions and other maybe bonds that they circulated, you know, as you have to pay off for building things, you know, as something, you know, a new edifice, new structure. But the point is that fiscal distress for municipalities is a huge issue and a growing problem. Yes or no? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we need to look short-term, long-term at how we're going to restructure local municipality and that form of governance so that there is not the fiscal distress. I mean, if you know, we're going to release a study, hopefully before the end of January, that will track Pennsylvania's local communities, every one of them, from 1970 to 2003. And what you're going to see is there is fiscal distress is not just a third-class urban issue. It's not just a city problem. You're going to see a lot of boroughs across Pennsylvania that are experiencing the same thing as second-class townships. I mean, is it a huge problem in first-class townships? No. But there are some townships that were extremely wealthy in 1970 that are still moderately wealthy today. But the trend is not going in the right direction for them. We need to address those issues. And tax sharing, keep going. Things, you know, tax sharing, you know, pension reforms of some sort, you know, health care, like you said earlier. I mean, those are issues that I think can help make local municipalities much more fiscally secure. Steve Stetler, my special guest. Thanks for the update. When you do your study, come back and talk with us about it. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and you all stay well.